giving tradies and contractors around the globe the tools to run a modern business. You're listening to Toolbox Talks from the Site Shed. Now here's your host, Matt Jones.
Hello and welcome back to the Site Shed for part 3 of this series where I've been joined by my co-host Clinton from TradiePad. If you missed the last couple of episodes, in the first episode we spoke about cloud computing, and in the last episode we spoke about job management. So that leaves this episode where we're going to be talking about project management. Clinton, thanks for joining us again.
Thank you for having me back.
Not a problem. So Clinton, today we're going to talk about project management. In the last episode we spoke about job management. How are they different?
I guess it's the suitability to the type of business. So we covered off, I'll just very briefly touch on job management. Job management is typically for service or maintenance type businesses where you're having to do multiple jobs per day and having to complete a lot of the job administration out in the field. Whereas project management is less focused on numbers of jobs per day and scheduling of multiple jobs a day, because with project management you might be on the one project for a day or a week or a month or 6 months or 12 months, whatever it is. So scheduling really isn't required. It's not like you need to know where you're going each day because you're on the one site, you're on the one project. So scheduling is not really required. But what is required is monitoring or tracking of time and costs on the project, so materials and maybe contractors, subcontractors, or equipment hire or something. So being able to keep a track of that stuff on an ongoing basis for the life of the project is probably the key thing. But also being able to compare actual time or actual costs to what was quoted. So if we're working on a quoted project, we might have an allowance of labour or allowance of costs or materials or whatever. Being able to compare what was the quoted allowance to what the actual is something that we can get with project management.
And what would be the advantage of that other than knowing where we over or under quoted for something?
Keeping the finger on the pulse throughout the life of the job. So instead of getting to the end of the job and then having to go through all the figures and work out whether you lost money or made money, you can actually monitor it as you're going.
So you can sort of look at an area of a job and say, okay, we've allocated X, we've so far used up this amount, this much of it.
Yeah.
We've got to get this wrapped up within this period. Right. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. So, and this leads into the next section, which is breaking the project up into components or sections. So for a plumber, for example, it's doing, say, construction plumbing. We might have the drainage section, the rough-in, the water rough-in, the drainage rough-in, the stormwater.
Yeah.
Break the project up into areas and then allow tracking of time and costs against those areas.
Okay.
It gets a lot more detailed.
We might jump into that in a little bit. Why would I need project management? So typically, what kind of work would I be doing if I wanted to have some sort of project management in my business?
Builders is a prime example.
Okay.
So builders need project management rather than job management because the building project is generally broken up into a lot of sections and spans over a period of time. And then anyone that's working on building type projects, so plumbers or electricians, or trades, just typical trades that are working on the project that's spanning a week or a month or 6 months or however long it is. So typically it's construction project based businesses, but quite frequently I come across trade businesses that are doing a mix of both. You'll be doing a bit of job management like maintenance work and service work, and you'll be doing construction jobs.
Yeah.
So they're very different. Job management to project management is very different, but there are a couple of systems out there that have a bit of crossover, that do a little bit of job management and a little bit of project management. Typically, they're not as detailed as a dedicated project management system or job management system, but can be quite good as a bit more of a kind of a broad system that can run both sides of the business.
Okay, so I suppose with that in mind, what would be some features of like a full-on project management system? So, what are the capabilities? So obviously we've got tracking job progress. So I'm guessing setting like a schedule for different areas of the project. Like you just mentioned there, it might be roughing, it might be stack work, it might be excavation.
Yeah, so there is I mentioned at the start that scheduling is more focused on job management. I guess it's a different type of scheduling. When we talk about project scheduling, it's a matter of mapping out when certain things or components need to be completed by, or when certain trades or contractors that are involved in the project are required within the project. So not so much hourly based scheduling like you get in job management systems where you can make a booking for, I'll be there between 9 and 11, but daily scheduling of, okay, we need the plumber on site here, we've got water roughing to be done, and then the plaster is going to come through, or the waterproofer, or whatever. So more focus on
deadlines,
scheduling out the critical path of the project.
Right. So I imagine for a builder, well, I don't imagine, I know from when I was in the trade. So a builder would have, say for example, they've got a set date where they need to pour a deck, pour a concrete deck, and then in the lead up to that, they've got to coordinate firstly the steel workers, the form workers. They've got to coordinate the electricians. They've got to coordinate the plumbers to come out and put down their penetrations. All this stuff has to be managed before that deck gets poured on the date of X.
That's right.
So everything will tie into that deadline. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So quite a commonly used software product is Microsoft Project.
Yeah.
And Microsoft Project has that scheduling capability where you can create tasks and then make them dependent upon previous tasks and allocate resources to them. So with the number of the job project management systems that we work with, they have that level of scheduling built into them, of project scheduling built into them.
Right.
So that's always a question. Do we need scheduling of that level?
Yeah.
And that narrows down the choices. The other...
Would there be many other trades that would need that level other than a builder, or from your experience?
Yeah. So a plumbing business that's doing big civil or commercial construction jobs, multi-story construction. Yeah, there's a lot of tasks and a lot of scheduling required to make sure that everything's getting done in the right order, but also as efficiently as possible.
Yeah.
Because typically these jobs are quoted, so the faster we can get them done, the more money we make.
Yeah.
So we want to make it as efficient as possible.
Yeah.
So going back to the original question of what are the components, we've spoken about scheduling, being able to break the project up into components or tasks, and being able to track time and costs against those, having resource allocations, so knowing which staff are allocated to which project, and being able to have visibility of which workers have been on that project, so tracking of time and timesheets, and generally having a documents repository for that project, so somewhere online where we can store sets of plans and scopes of works and photos. Photos is a big one, ongoing photos of the project. So having that repository where all of that information can get stored against the project as well.
What about things like occupational health and safety and documentation to do with the project, as in safe work method statements and that kind of stuff?
Yeah. So that can just go, you could store that in just the standard file storage component of the project. But generally, there's more specific requirements around workplace health and safety nowadays. So this is probably a whole nother conversation, but you have dedicated tools now that can manage that whole portion of the business for you, where you've got all your policies, all your documents, making a record of any incidents that have occurred, scheduling out toolbox talks and training sessions and testing and tagging. So it's a whole nother tool in itself if you need it.
Yeah.
A lot of people just have quite simple requirements where it might just be some documents, and we might just store those documents against the project in the document repository. But if we need something more capable and more compliant, then there are dedicated tools just to manage the workplace health and safety.
Okay. Yep. Okay. So what would be some of the things that I need to consider when I'm choosing a project management tool for my company?
We mentioned this in the job management session, but it's applicable in here as well. Where the business is being operated from. So if you've got someone in the office full time, that can be like your project manager or project supervisor that can drive the system. Then we've pretty much got a free choice of any of the systems that are out there. But if the business is being run from the field and needs to be run off a tablet or off a phone or an iPad or something, then that's a big consideration. So we need to have that mobile component, the mobility component, rather than being bound to a computer. The other components, I guess reporting is a huge one. Having a tool that can provide you with the data that you need, so the reports that you want to run, whether it's time reports or cost reports or profit and loss on the project, quoted versus actual.
Stages?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so being able to monitor the stage of the build or the stage of the project, and that reporting, the reporting engine can become a really powerful tool, because it's all about data now. It's all about collecting this information in the field, and then we've got to be able to do something with it. Yeah, we can use it for invoicing or whatever it might be, but being able to analyse the project as you're going through and at the completion of the project can give you a lot more business intelligence. So you can start to break the project up at the end and say, okay, where did we go over? Where did we go under? Where do I need to sharpen up my quoting skills? Where do we need to get the guys focusing a bit better? So reporting is huge.
Does that reporting as well, does that make it easier when you come to the point of getting like a progress claim sent out? Does that also go towards that documenting what's actually been done as a percentage? Or
100%.
Okay.
Yeah, 100%, because depending on the type of project, whether it's a quoted project, your progress claims might just be at certain milestones and it might be just a fixed dollar figure. But if it's a cost plus job and you're invoicing for a progress claim for work done to date, we want to be able to make that invoicing process as quick and as accurate as possible. So this is where project management tools can track time and track ongoing costs and allow us to create an invoice with the click of a button.
What about in a scenario where there's a lot of design and construct? So you might have to, you've been given the responsibility of, okay, you need to get this done. However you want to do it, go ahead and do it. You've quoted a price, but then you need to obviously track, and there will be additional costs that might come as a result of what you uncover when you get to work. Does project management allow you to monitor, track, and I suppose document that?
Yeah, so we're talking variations?
Well, yeah, I guess variations. Yeah,
variations. Yeah. So knowing a scope of works, knowing what's included and what's not, and then being able to make a record of a variation or a record of something that's outside of the scope. So yeah, a lot of the dedicated construction management tools will give you visibility of the scope and let you create a variation that can then be issued to the owner or to the client for them to approve, and then that becomes a billable item.
Yeah.
So a specific variations a module, I guess.
So you can create that. You can give it to the client or the builder or whatever it is. They can approve it, sign it, and then that gets documented, saved in the system
as a numbered variation as part of that project.
Yeah.
So you might have 1, you might have 100.
Okay.
So tracking those ongoing, both in the creation and in the billing and in the cost tracking, that's the whole concept of creating the variation, is to allow you to monitor it.
Yep. Okay, so as a result of implementing project management, I mean, I suppose these days, in your experience, are there a lot of companies that do that kind of work that don't have project management?
Yeah, heaps.
Really? So what are they doing until they...
flying a little bit blind.
Right.
So it's quite common that I'll come across businesses that just aren't tracking. You do a quote, you'll win a job, it might be a $100,000 job, and we just go and do the work, and away we go.
So what are some of the pain points that they are feeling that you can help alleviate with project management?
Just tracking the time and the costs. So actually having that visibility of how you are progressing with the project. And another big one is collecting data in the field. So I know from my past experience, I'd end up with a folder full of documents and supplier invoices and whatever that you'd have to then sit down and go through at the end of the month, the end of the period, to put together all the billing, and being able to do that on an ongoing basis as it occurs. So if you make a purchase, you can log that as a purchase against that job. If you might gather some documentation around some installation requirements or something, save that as a document against the job as well. So you're doing it on an ongoing basis, so that you're not having to do this big chunk of work at the end when it.
So with a project management system, talking specifically about construction, does it give you the capability to sort of template a project? So when you know what I mean? Like if you took on a new project, you say, okay, this is exactly how I want it to run based off the last one?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay.
Yeah, so a bit of work goes in initially in building that first job or building that template, but that then becomes used over and over and over again. So yeah, and you might even pull the template in, use the template to create a job that isn't exactly the same, but then you've got a good starting point. You can then manipulate it and add more components or tasks or milestones or whatever it is.
I mean, we use a lot of project management in our business, but obviously it's not a construction business. And we find one of the best things is obviously building the systems around the processes that need to take place. So step by step, you can tick the box. So yeah, we've done this, move on to the next thing. And if you've missed something, we find one of the advantages of project management is, well, it's not really an advantage, but you know, if there's something that doesn't get done on the job, it's very rarely a result of the people on site. It's more a result of a flaw in the management system. So we always try and go back, amend that, and then say, okay, now try it. And then if it doesn't work again, then we go back and amend it again. And now try it.
Yeah.
Is that kind of the same mentality?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this ends up being a bit of an eye opener for a lot of people as well, because I think a lot of people don't realise that what they're doing is a system. It's a process. And when you get tools, when you get a project management tool that has that type of concept where you're able to template things and you're able to create these checklists and to-do items and whatever, you realise that it really is just a process that you're following. And the sooner you come to that realisation, the sooner it is that you're able to make the business run more efficiently and start to refine your processes to really make the business efficiency improve.
Yeah.
So,
because it's an ongoing work in process, isn't it? I mean, project management, you're always tweaking, modifying, improving, removing, making additions to it that can improve the efficiency and the way that project flows.
Yeah, absolutely. Communication is a huge thing. So being able to communicate on the project with internal staff, with contractors, with clients.
Yeah.
So when you improve the communication, efficiency gains just come along with that.
Okay, so let's talk about that for a minute, because I know that's something we're big on too. Like in our project management system, if there's anything that we need to do in relation to that project, we make sure it's always documented within that job file on that in the project management system. Mm-hmm. Is it the same on construction?
Yeah.
So if you had to talk about, let's say you had a discussion about a specific variation that might involve the builder, the plumber, the electrician, and the air conditioning guy, you would all communicate through the same platform. Is that the idea?
Yeah. Okay. And a lot of times that works in theory,
right,
but in practice, maybe not so much.
Because it's often just easier to yell across the scaffold to them.
Yeah, but I think it's also a bit of maturity of the businesses using the technology. So we haven't had these tools before. So when we're talking about all those different people involved in that communication, the plumber and the plasterer and whoever it was, they will all have different levels of knowledge around technology. And some people might be really tech savvy, some not so much. So if we're asking everybody to work off this one software-based platform, So sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Okay, we'll say though, for example, we had a meeting about it.
Yeah.
Would that meeting be documented within the project?
Yeah.
Okay.
100%. Yeah, 100%. And some of the more advanced construction management tools will allow you to invite or have your subcontractors and your clients and whatever as part of the project.
Yeah.
And you can then allocate things to them. You can create to-dos. If the client's involved in the project, you might be able to communicate with them about selections, put deadlines on when certain selections are required, create variations, send them to the client for approval. And with one of the systems we have, the client can use an app on their phone that they can access the project, and they can see photos and they can see daily logs, and they can view selection requirements and request for information and variations and all that stuff in the app on their phone.
Right.
And that can be a huge selling point for a lot of businesses, because if you're doing, say, really high-end domestic construction work, the clients can sometimes be a little bit picky, a little bit finicky with things. So when you can show them that you've got this integrated communication platform that you'll use to run the project, that can be a massive selling point.
And does it work across all levels? So say, for example, you've got a job supervisor who's running the project, and then underneath him, he might have, two foremen. And then underneath the foreman, he might have some,
leading hands,
and then they might have workers. Does it work like that? Is it like a hierarchy that they can filter down? So
yeah,
the supervisor can delegate to the foreman, who can then delegate to the lead hands.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. And again, just like with job management, you are able to control. You're able to control what people can see and do within the system.
Yeah.
So you can control their levels of access and their levels of functionality.
Yeah.
So again, just like with job management, the project itself becomes the bucket for all of the job-related info, all the project-related info. So that might be a list of to-do items that have been created and delegated. You can see them all together in one list. You can see who they've been given to, what's been completed, what hasn't, any notes associated with them.
Yeah. So as somebody that's never used project management in my construction business before, what are some of the advantages that I would immediately see by implementing a cloud-based project management tool would be what?
Communication, I think, would be the first one.
Internal and across to the trades?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So everybody working off the one set of information.
Yeah.
Whether it's the project schedule, or it's the scope of works, or it's the to-do lists, or tasks, whatever it might be. When you've got everybody working off that one common list, it just gets the communication going so much better, and I think less errors as well. So I know when I was plumbing, I did a lot of construction plumbing, and communication was sometimes a bit lacking between the trades. Like I need to have a certain portion of the building done before I can get all my plumbing in, and you might schedule to come back on a certain day, and it hasn't been done. So you rock up on site and it's a waste of time. You might have to move on to something else. So having a common list of information and a common schedule can be really powerful for efficiency gains.
Is it hard to make people accountable to that?
Yeah, it can be, because if we've got multiple trades, for example, involved in a project, we're trying to get them to use our system. So me as a builder, I might be using a particular type of tool, and I might say, okay, I want you to use this particular thing to communicate with me about the project. So you're basically asking an external party to use your system to make your project run better.
So it's a learning curve.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, learning curve, because there's the variables there, I suppose, are the technology that the particular tradesperson might have. So whether they've got a smartphone, or they've got an iPad or a tablet or something, they might not have any of that stuff. I deal with a lot of clients that have standard old Nokia phones that make phone calls, and that's the first discussion is, we've got to look at getting some devices. So you got to deal with that. We've got to deal with levels of tech savviness or knowledge on how to use software, and that's always the first hurdle.
I imagine though there'd be ways around that as well. I mean, if as the builder or if as the actual project manager yourself, you said, listen, this is how this works. We need this information so we don't let other trades down. Either there's apps available, you can get it, you can enter it yourself, or even if you just give it to us and we'll enter it into the system.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. But one thing to be really careful of here is you're not creating more administration work than you had before.
Right.
And I see that quite often where, you've got all these fancy bells and whistles and you've got all these features, but the time that it takes to get the information into the system can sometimes not be worth the output of what you get for putting that time in.
Right.
So
I suppose there's a fine line there, but I can imagine if you're trying to coordinate multiple trades and that information is relevant across the board, then I imagine that in some way, shape or form, it would be beneficial for the good of the project to have that information entered regularly.
Yeah, absolutely. Because like I said before, the system's only as good as the data you're putting into it.
Yeah.
So the more that can go in, the better it is, up to a certain level.
Yeah.
You don't want to be sitting there as a project foreman, just sitting at the computer 100% of the time. You're not monitoring the project, you're just sitting there doing data entry. We want to avoid that.
So in a perfect world, I mean, if everyone was tech savvy and they all had iPhones and everything on site, and if a project was going to be held up by, I don't know, a certain trade or weather or whatever it was, a notification could go out to everyone and saying, hey, look, this project's being set back in a day due to X, Y, Z.
Absolutely.
In a non-perfect world, if people don't have their phones and they're not very tech savvy, then it might be the case of the project manager or the leading hand or somebody then sending out a text saying, hey, listen, this project's been held up because of X, Y, Z.
Yeah. But at least the project manager has the ability to see that and monitor that on an ongoing basis because they've got the tool.
And that's the fundamental, I suppose, component of project management. They've got an oversight of everything that's happening and they got sort of, well, if not control, at least they've got visibility. Okay. Anything we missed there on project management? We haven't even touched on, I suppose, inventory and stock and that kind of stuff. Is that a component or not so much?
No, not so much. Inventory and stock, or maybe a catalogue like a parts list or an items list. If I'm doing construction plumbing work, I might be adding, I might do a full rough in and I use a whole heap of gear. If I have a catalogue there that I can choose from of the gear that I've used, then that can go against that job for costing purposes, against the project for costing purposes and for billing. So you're having a catalogue of items is really handy. But if we're talking about stock, so tracking of stock levels on vehicles and in warehouses and stuff, that's a whole other ballgame.
Okay.
But what we probably should touch on is the quotes. So quotes and estimating, I get asked about that all the time, and I think a lot of people put the project management and the quoting in the same basket, but they shouldn't be. The quoting a project or estimating a project can be a pretty big task in itself, and there's a lot of dedicated estimating and quoting tools out there that don't do project management. They don't do anything to do with the monitoring of the project. All they do is just the estimating. So again, there's probably another session just in the quoting and estimating side of things. But if we're doing quoted works and it's a big project, you want to make sure that quote that you're putting together is as accurate as possible, because you're risking a lot if it's not right. So on a building project, being able to import a set of plans and do takeoff and then estimate out the time and material requirements for all the different sections of the project, that quote that we create or the estimate that we create then forms the yardstick for what we measure the project against. So there is a bit of crossover between what the quoting or estimating tool is creating or is the data it's giving us and then what we want to track against. So having the two tools talking to each other can be quite beneficial. But again, it's having the right quoting tool for the job. I haven't successfully found any project management tools, cloud-based project management tools that incorporate a complex enough quoting system that it can be an all-in-one.
Like estimating?
Yeah. So generally it's you'll have your estimating tool, you'll have your project management tool.
Yeah, right.
Because you have one. If you have one thing that's trying to do it all, generally it's not very good at any of it.
Yeah.
It's just a bit more, a bit more general.
Try to be everything to everyone, you end up being nothing to anyone.
Yeah, that's very true.
All right, cool. Well, I guess that pretty much wraps up project management, and it also wraps up this series. So I'd like to firstly say thanks to Clinton for co-hosting me on this series. Thanks, mate.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And to wrap up, so let's just do a quick wrap up of, I suppose, cloud in general. So my take on cloud is it's a way that you can have your business information and data available to you from any device, from anywhere in the world. You can stay connected, and you're not relying on a computer or a diary or anything in particular, because it's available no matter where you are, as long as you can access the internet. I guess, is that pretty much sums it up?
100%. And collaboration is another big one.
Yep.
So being able to have other people involved in your business all working off the same information and collaborating together is super powerful.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that is a big thing. It's a hard thing to even it's hard to actually verbalize the advantages of having a collaborative tool until you've actually used it. You're like, whoa.
Yeah. Collabo what?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so job management. Quick summary on job management.
Allowing you to, again, collaboration tools. So if you've got staff working for you, being able to create jobs and share them and allocate them and get everybody working off the one lot of information. Single entry of info. Having all of the information together in one place, and being able to get all of that job-related administration done on the spot, whether it's creating invoices or creating quotes or just logging time and materials, but being able to collect that info there on the spot while you're still on that job. Yep.
And I suppose the other thing we might add to that is the ability to enable that project from the time you take the call right through to where you take payment, so including all the stages in between.
Yeah.
And lastly, project management.
Mm-hmm. So ongoing jobs spanning over a period of time. Again, collaboration, having everybody working off the same lot of information, but tracking the project time and costs, and being able to break the project up into components or sections, so that you can start to analyse the information and the data about if it was a quoted job, comparing it quoted versus actual, how long did it actually take us, how much did it actually cost in comparison to what we'd estimated. So getting some detailed reporting on the project and collecting that information on an ongoing basis.
Yep, excellent. Well, that's good. So I think we've pretty much covered everything that we wanted to there. For those listening, if there's something that you wanted more specific information on, then by all means, send that through to us. You can contact us at thesiteshed.com. And look, as an ongoing, I've invited Clinton back as a regular co-host here. Every month he's going to poke his head in, and we're going to do a tech talk on Toolbox Talks. And he's going to bewilder us with his knowledge of technology, which he hasn't had a chance to do, and I can see foaming at the mouth here, waiting to get that done. So, no, that'll be a good segment. Clinton, where can people find you?
Our website's a good starting point.
Yep.
TradiePad.com.au. But we're also on all the social media channels. We've got a Facebook page, and we've got the Twitter and all of those fancy
So that's
things.
TradiePad, TARDIE pad.com.au.
You just spelled that as TardiePad.
TradiePad.com.au. Is that right?
Yeah, perfect.
That was awkward. And they're also the same across all their social media, so you can pretty much get them anywhere there.
Just Google us.
Just Google it. There you go. Yeah, and I would also like to say, I don't know.
That'll do.
Word of that, yeah.
That's a good close.
Yeah. Anyway, that's all from Clinton and I. Clinton, thanks again for joining us. Thank you, listeners, and stay tuned for upcoming episodes. That's a wrap. So if you haven't already, head across to thesiteshed.com and register for our Toolbox Talks, where you'll be regularly sent great episodes just like this straight to your inbox, so you'll never miss one.
If you want to join the community, you can head across to thesiteshed.com/members, where for a small monthly fee, you'll get access to regularly updated training material, as well as access to our forum where you can mingle and collaborate with trade-based business owners just like you from all over the world. If you're enjoying this podcast, please head across to iTunes and leave us a 5-star review. We greatly appreciate it, and it helps us spread the word and reach the masses. Likewise, if you know anyone that might benefit from the content we create, then please go ahead and share this with them.
You've been listening to Toolbox Talks by The Site Shed. For more great content just like this, head across to thesiteshed.com and join the amazing community of savvy trade-based business owners.